Severance Season 2 finale, and what could potentially be in store for the highly anticipated Season 3. Where am I? Is Season 3 out already? Can I get a waffle? Guess not. As Audie J. Buck's fingers hurt from typing this little breakdown, well, you know what? My back hurts from carrying this channel. So many things happened in Season 2, so I just want to dive right into some of the spicy predictions, theories, and questions. If Irving comes back for Season 3, which, honestly, I could see this as a beautiful send-off for the character, never to see him again, my guess is that his storyline will explore the outside world, beyond Kier and Lumon's reach. It'll be an interesting angle, showing how people like the door guy from Episode 2 actually feel about Lumon and the cult of Kier. It's all poised to reveal a kind of crazy religious view, maybe showing how a majority of people actually don't use or consume Lumon products, with only a few fringe, key religious nets worshipping Kier. Meanwhile, other townsfolk are like, yeah, just ignore that guy. Of course, the opposite could also happen, and every nearby town might be obsessed with Lumon, but I personally think the former scenario is more interesting. Who the heck was Irving talking to on the phone? That storyline in Season 2 was super mysterious and never fully came into the light. Who are these shadowy people he's calling and potentially working for? An initial guess might be the Mind Collective. I mean, maybe. But I think it's something more serious, a more organized group, possibly a Lumon competitor who sent Irving in undercover. There's clearly a military past, something involving Irving's father, and the whole Charlie Day conspiracy, Doc Wall vibe. So why is he doing all this research? How does he know about the dark testing elevator? With Season 3 potentially expanding the world outward, I think we'll see new characters, factions, and agendas. Speaking of factions, I think Irving has been reintegrated possibly with the help of Rabe. There are just too many clues not to include this theory. Rob mentioned to Mark that she's gotten better with the procedure since the last time they met. So, is Irving this mysterious testing subject? He did remember the dark testing elevator paintings when he was on the severed floor, which led to him sketching the elevator. Was the initial image of the elevator given to him while he was still on the outside? We know there were moments when Irving napped and his subconscious memories bled through a weird workaround for the severance chips, reinforced by Milch getting upset that Irving kept dozing off in Season 1. But more clues suggest Irving knew more than what he picked up in his sleep. Like the mention of his innie getting a message while on the phone later at the train station. That conversation implies that Irving has, in fact, remembered his love for Bert's something reintegration would definitely allow. I'm truly sorry. I'm just not ready. I want to have it. Nothing. I'm ready. One of the biggest clues? Irving's starving moment during the Ortbo in Episode 4. Later, we learn that the munchies are somehow a side effect of reintegration, according to Rabe. And Irving is insatiable. We're starving over here. Mr. Milch, give this man a sandwich. My guess is that Rabe was behind this, and honestly, she could be the mysterious person on the phone. You know what would go great with those waffles? Some orange juice. Maybe bacon. A bacon cheeseburger? Luckily, I can order all of that with Uber Eats, today's sponsor. Audie J. Buck is the worst at picking weekly lunches down here, so instead I'll treat myself. Uber Eats makes it super easy to get comfort food delivered without even leaving the severed floor. Though let's be real, I can't leave anyway. Can you say melon party? Today, Uber Eats is offering first-time users $15 off your first order of $20 or more when you use code GBUCK15. I just ordered a mango, I don't even know what that is. Again, use code JBUCK15 to get $15 off your first order of $20 or more. Thanks to Uber Eats for sponsoring this. Now, let's get back to the severed floor. Thank me for that. I think Miss Wong is going to be like a window into Lumon's inner workings and how they prepare young Wintertide Fellowship honorees for servitude at Lumon. Remember, the last we saw of this child was her leaving her parents' home and shipping off to the Gunnel Egan Empathy Center, located in Spar, a desolate frozen tundra in Norway. This isn't some fun spring break adventure. I believe this is going to show the horrible training environment young Lumon employees have to endure in order to become essentially the missiles of their classes. Imagine physical and psychological torture, with an emphasis on instilling Kier into every fiber of their being. It's a cult-like education system, eliminating childish folly and forging the emotionless Kier soldiers Lumon desires. This, in turn, won't just progress Miss Wong's character development, it will also indirectly expand on Miss Coble's past. We can infer she likely went through the same kind of torture that Miss Wong is now destined for. James Egan is a weirdo. I mean, this guy isn't just playing video games in his little cuck room, it's pretty clear he's out there swiping through all kinds of women. With that quote about James' girls and how he's seen others, it's strongly implied there are multiple women he's involved with. She's one of James, but no one wants to know about the others he's keeping in the shadows. Now, this is big. It shows Helena seems to be the chosen one who gets to live publicly and proudly as an Egan, while there are countless others out there who could also be considered rightful heirs to the Kier dynasty. I'm curious how much Season 3 will explore this. I think it might tie into James Egan's Wintertide Fellowship honors and possibly all of the women attending these Lumon-run boarding schools. James is probably looking for those who embody the 9 core Lumon principles, women who've devoted their entire lives to Kier. Then, in some twisted way, he breeds with them, trying to sire the next true Egan heir and essentially create a superior race of Kier's children scattered across the world. If this does happen, it also adds depth to Coble's history. It's possible she was assaulted by James and could have become pregnant. If that's the case, Miss Coble might be the mother of either Helly or Mark. I'll admit, this leans heavily into Star Wars territory, but I lean closer to it being Mark than Helly. Coble throughout this entire series has had a unique relationship with both Mark's Innie and Audie. You could chalk it up to her having a more vested interest in Mark, Gemma, and the Severance chip in general, since we learned she's the one who created and developed the chip, and she's desperate to understand the limits of Severance. Take all the Mark and Ms. Casey wellness checks, for example. However, she might also be deeply invested because this is a child she never got to raise, and now has to live vicariously, watching from the outside looking in. Mark may essentially be an Egan. I know things might get messy with Mark and Devon growing up together, but assuming one or both were adopted, it could make sense. Why else would Coble end up being Devon's lactation consultant? Maybe to get closer to someone she was torn from at a very young age. Part of me believes Mark has always been destined to work at Lumon and be part of Kier's story. Yes, this theory rides a bit on the idea that he's Coble and James' illegitimate offspring, but there's something about how they've always held Mark in higher regard that never sat right with me. Sure, he was refining Gemma's tempers, giving Lumon exactly what they wanted with the Severance chip, but what if this is exactly how things were meant to play out? I can't stop thinking about the Lumon paintings. What if they're not just historical records, but prophecies of things yet to come? For example, the macrodata refinement calamity painting could be foreshadowing the Season 2 ending with Dylan and C and M standing up against Milch. Kier pardons his betrayers, where he's shown dressed as a Union officer from the American Civil War, could hint at an internal civil war between the Innies and Audies. And for this, I'm truly hoping for a Lord of the Flies style, almost barbaric descent into chaos. Approaching the severed floor, as all of the Innies slowly develop autonomy, imagine one person doing hostage negotiations with themselves. The courtship of Kier and Imogen is actually Mark and Helly falling in love in the spirit of industry. And then there's the youthful convalescence of Kier, someone who looks oddly similar to Mark Scout, praying at Kier's bedside, devoting his life to Kier's teachings. All of these paintings might not be depicting the past, but the future. Or maybe they're playing into the idea of cycles revolving destinies. Love always finds love. And someone like Mark is always destined to find a path back to Kier. The concept of cycles or life repeating itself could be reflected in Mark and Helly's relationship, mirroring the story of Kier and Imogen, both workers in an ether mill, theoretically forgetting their outside lives while at work, just like the employees on the severed floor. Both fall in love in the spirit of industry. Both Mark and Helly could be Kier's offspring, and together, in a strange way, they would be birthing a new Kier into the world, essentially a resurrection. The ongoing references to babies and fertility throughout the first 2 seasons point toward this, and it would absolutely fit within the Kier mythology. If Mark and Helly are both Egan offspring, as I suggested earlier, it would tie neatly into the origin of Kier's parents. The Compliance Handbook says, "My skin was prone to ample bruising, a remnant of the consumption, and of the close biological relationship betwixt my mother and father." So theoretically, Kier's parents were closely related, something that, historically, has existed in certain religious or royal bloodlines. Furthermore, in some cases, closely related parents can result in an increased susceptibility to psychotic or mood disorders. This could support the theory that the Kier and Deer story was really about Kier's multiple personalities, and that Kier killed off one of those personalities. Leaning into everything I've just mentioned, I do think Mark and Helly are going to be expecting a child. Yes, I think Helena is pregnant, which is going to result in one of the most insane episodes of Maury I've ever imagined. UARE the father. Mark went downtown to Pound Town with both Helly and Helena theoretically, without protection and with all the overwhelming symbolism around fertility in children. Even that little kid in the Season 2 intro. I believe this pregnancy is inevitable. From a storytelling perspective, though, I have no idea how you pull this off without it feeling gimmicky. Let me know in the comments if you think this whole pregnancy theory is plausible and how they could possibly pull it off. Jaime Egan showing up on the severed floor and saying he sees Kier in Helly, especially when she's acting out of malicious intent, shows me Jaime, like many others, is leaning hard into one of the Lumon core principles. Wiles defined as devious or cunning stratagems to persuade someone to do what one wants. This old guy definitely has something up his sleeve. And that something is manipulating Helly, her spirit of Kier, into continuing the Egan Lumon CEO legacy while using Mark as her carrot for motivation. I'm not entirely sure how this would work. Maybe Mark and Helly refine each other's MDR numbers. Maybe Gemma-like doors are installed, and the two of them get to live at the Egan compound. Or something completely in between. There has to be a plan B, something else Lumon is cooking up. Because they know the Ennies will cling to anything resembling family. That's their weakness in the eyes of Kier. Speaking of refining, who were the other 3 MDR employees working on? If Mark was solely refining Gemma every day, what were Dylan, Helly, and Irving doing? These 4 came into work, hit some keys, and sorted some numbers, but who did these tempers actually belong to? My best guess? Other kidnapped test subjects. There's some pretty grim evidence pointing toward this. First, there's a door opposite of Gemma's room, meaning someone else had to have lived in that space at some point. There were clearly more doors or file names than the 25 that were assigned to Gemma. So these must have belonged to other people as well. During the sacrificial goat ceremony, Lauren asks, "How many more?" Implying this has happened many times before. This suggests that tens, maybe even hundreds, of test floor subjects have met the same fate Gemma was destined for. This ties back to Season 1, when Dylan tells Helly that typically only 1 in 5 files is completed before they expire. Expire meaning whoever those file names belong to, they're 100% dead. And then there's the massive cemetery next to the Lumon housing. This place is a testing town, which explains why it feels so eerily quiet, because Lumon is sacrificing hundreds of people in the name of religious science or scientific ritual. I don't know, man. But MDR were refining randos, and it wasn't until Mark's freshman fluke that Lumon discovered an emotional, loving bond allowed MDR employees to refine harder, better, faster, stronger. This next one's quick and kind of sad. I think Season 3 is going to show us more of Milchick's personal life outside of work. And unfortunately, I think it's going to be drab and depressing. Like Irving, Milchick has been the company man persona throughout the series. But only in the latter half of Season 2 did we see cracks in his allegiance as he began to question some of Lumon's methods. Because of his devotion to his career, He's made sacrifices, and I think he's incredibly lonely. I imagine him coming home to an empty apartment. A bare fridge. A bare living room. Very few friends or family to connect with. He's missed out on meaningful moments in people's lives, all because of his loyalty to Lumon. One of Severance's major themes has always been work-life balance, and what a beautifully haunting way to portray this than through a beloved character who seems joyful at work but has nothing to show for it outside. His work is his life. As someone who has also, at times, prioritized work over life, seeing this play out on screen is going to feel like looking into a mirror. And yeah, it's going to be devastating. Now, this theory has been one of the most commented on ideas since the Season 2 finale. The ending felt jarring, even out of character for Helly. And remember Mark couldn't tell the difference between Helly and Helena on the severed floor? So what a twist it would be if Helena tricked Mark at the very end, getting him to stay on the severed floor away from Gemma. It would be Neato Chris Speedo, don't get me wrong. However, it's been debunked. Actress Britt Lower confirmed in an interview with the Los Angeles Times that it's Helly R in the final episode. So yeah, it's fun to theorize, but this one's a no-go. Moving on, who the heck was the man of mystery on the severed floor? Think back to Season 2, Episode 1 when Mark rushes into wellness, and there's some serious stranger danger just creeping in the background. So who is this dude? According to the credits, he's played by the same actor who portrayed Mark's shadow character in the Orbo episode. But that's just the body double. In universe, who is this guy? At first, I thought maybe it was James Egan. We know he's creeping around during episodes 9 and 10, which lines up with Milchick's undercover story. But the build and movement of the mystery man looks more like a younger person. I don't know how this would even be possible, but I'm curious, could it somehow be Mark? That would push Severance in a way more sci-fi direction, but I wonder if time manipulation might come into play. Could time on the severed floor be altered or distorted somehow? There have been plenty of scenes emphasizing clocks, watches, and the passage of time. Even Ben Stiller told fans to pay close attention to what's in Mark's locker drawer. Could be a troll, or it could be something huge. Either way, introducing a weird time element would be a wild twist in the otherwise grounded world of Severance. I'm saying it's Mark. But how? Milchick has a fun Tonight Show style back and forth with the Kier animatronic in episode 10, which eventually goes off script, berating Seth for his verbose vocabulary. How is this thing going off script? Is that not weird to anyone else? I'm saying this could actually be Kier Egan's consciousness, or at least part of it. Ever since Season 1, one of the biggest mysteries has been, who is the board? From the beginning, I've been convinced that previous CEOs undergo the mysterious revolving, which involves uploading their consciousness into a computer so they can theoretically live forever. Back in my Season 2, Episode 4 breakdown, I mentioned the Montauk chair, a part of the broader Montauk Project conspiracy. Go look it up if you're curious. The idea is that this chair was used to upload a person's mind, allowing them to communicate or observe through other mediums. Think about it, the board speaker box could easily be one of these mediums. Maybe even Natalie's eyes almost like Inside Out, but way creepier. So yes, I'm saying Kier's consciousness and maybe others are now in digital form. And the Kier animatronic berating Milchick? That was the biggest piece of evidence yet. Actor Mark Geller, who plays the stand-in model for Kier Egan, also voices him in this scene. That further supports the theory, if and when Kier Egan appears in person, he'll sound exactly like that voice. Now, this next theory is based on pretty thin evidence, but it's interesting. These two characters never physically meet in the series, yet they're very aware of each other. I'm betting they did meet possibly as friends when Coble attended the Myrtle Egan School for Girls. It would be a fascinating reveal if both of them actually worked on the Severance chip schematics. Maybe they were close collaborators, a sort of Roman and Al situation? Only Coble was in favor of giving the plans and credit to Lumon and James, while Rabo was completely against it, fully aware of the dangers. That's likely why Rabe knows so much about the chip, and why she has at least basic knowledge of how to deactivate it. Season 1 introduced us to the power of the OTC over time control, Severance chip function, while Season 2 brought in the Glasgow block. But what about all those other mysterious commands we see when Dylan is flipping through the interface? Beehive sounds like a hive mind function, every chipped employee working toward a unified goal. Branch transfer seems straightforward, like when the new hires at the start of Season 2 were brought in from Branch 5X. Clean slate is especially sinister. It feels like it could wipe someone entirely, a full reset. That would be wild. Elephant likely restores all memories, possibly an actual reintegration command, given how elephants are known for their incredible memory. Goldfish, by contrast, could simulate short-term memory loss like a 51st date situation. Freeze frame might literally stop a severed person in their tracks. Lullaby could be similar. Maybe it's the method used on the EMDR team to get them to the Orbo, assuming that actually took place outside. Open House suggests multiple people could access a chip, possibly the method the board uses to communicate through Natalie. We last see Gemma in the Lumon stairwell. So what's next? It would feel a little silly if she were immediately grabbed and thrown back into Lumon's clutches. So I'm predicting a role reversal. Gemma might now team up with Devin and Kobold to try and get Mark out of Lumon. Unfortunately, Mark's innie is now calling the shots. So this is going to be a convoluted mess. Originally, I thought the three of them might take everything to the press. But with how things are playing out and the implications in the Lexington letter, it seems like everyone's already in Lumon's pocket. Stories about Lumon just don't get published. Clearly, Gemma's chip will be the hot ticket item for Lumon, so Season 3 may evolve into a darker corporate espionage thriller. I could see Kobold potentially using Gemma for her own personal gain, but right now, everyone's motivations are really cloudy. Devin and Gemma seem to be the two who will lead the Save Mark operation, but how is the real question? I'm curious about the potential public outrage if Gemma's rescue actually makes global news, or at least local headlines. Now, I don't believe this next theory at all, but the number of times it has been commented on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram is staggering. People keep saying that Rickon and his friends are actually goats turned into people. I am not drinking the Kool-Aid on this one, but here's the evidence people cite. Rickon's facial hair supposedly resembles that of a goat. He was able to scale a rock face with ease, like a mountain goat. His friends seem oddly oblivious to basic concepts. For example, one of them claimed World War. I wouldn't have been called that at the time because no one knew there'd be a second World War, which, fair, but also very strange. Lastly, Rebek apparently has weird sores or scars on the back of her head, possibly from the severance procedure. Devin later adds that Rebek chews weird, and you know anyone who chews weird has got to be a goat, right? Anyway, that wraps up all of my Severance Season 3 questions, theories, and predictions. I absolutely cannot wait for Season 3. I'm super curious what you think is going to happen. Drop your thoughts, feelings, theories, anything in the comments below. I'm sure D. Erickson has some weirdness cooking up, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of the world in Severance. This has become one of my favorite shows in a long time. Again, comment your favorite Season 3 theories and predictions. And stay tuned. I've got a big Season 2 Easter egg and reference video dropping next week. Thank you, as always, for watching and praise Kier.